Good morning, everyone. Please join in our gathering hymn, One More Day. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to First Unitarian Church of Portland, Oregon. Our mission is to nurture the individual spirit and together to work toward the beloved community. I'm so glad you're with us this morning. There are several activities after the service today that you might be interested in, and you can connect with all of them through the QR codes that will appear at the end of the service. You can join fellow congregants for a virtual social hour. I will be leading a class for newcomers to the church. We'll talk about Unitarian Universalism, this congregation and its history, as well as what it means to be a member. And this is Foundation Month, and if you'd like to know more about how to make the church a part of your estate plans, stewards of our foundation will be on hand to visit with you after the service. There's much in the news these days around police accountability, police funding, mass incarceration, and the prison industrial complex. If you'd like to learn more about any and all of these, you are invited to be part of an action study group called the Abolition Movement that will begin on April the 6th. I encourage you to check it out. There is much to learn and much that calls for us to bear witness in these times. Finally, this morning, I'm pleased to introduce our guest minister. The Reverend J. Lynn Scott is a Buddhist community minister currently serving as executive director of the Lavender Rights Project based in Tacoma, Washington. She has also served as a religious educator in 3 UU congregations during her career. Reverend Scott is a graduate of Naropa University's Buddhist Divinity Program and brings decades of dedicated meditation experience to her ministry. So glad to have Reverend Scott with us this morning. As I light the chalice on our chancel today, I invite you to light a chancel at home if you have one now. We are Unitarian Universalists. We light this chalice in faith, in hope, and in love.
What I gotta see. Do I have the strength to fight my insecurities? Can't hold my grip, think I'm losing control. Slash my ambitions is fading slow. Do I have the strength to get where I need to go? Is anybody near me? Does anybody feel me? This is what I need. I wish I could be a little bit braver, a little more sooner, a little more cooler. There's something inside of me, something inside of me screaming, oh, 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 let me live out loud. Oh, oh, let me live, let me live. Afraid to be strong and too strong to be afraid, caught up in a daze between staying and running away. Can't be a good girl and just do what I'm told. Can't let this pillow just swallow me whole. Gotta go find the strength to carry this load. Is anybody near me? Does anybody feel me? Trying to break free. I wish I could be a little bit louder, a little more often. Can you hear me talking? There's something inside of me, something inside of me screaming, oh, 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 let me live out loud. Oh, oh, let me live, let me live. Something Is anybody near me? Does anybody feel me? This is what I need. I wish I could be a little bit braver, a little bit sooner, a little more cooler. There's something inside of me. Something inside of me screaming, oh, 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 let me live out loud. Oh, oh, let me live, let me live. Something inside of me. Something inside of me screaming, oh, 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 let me live out loud. Oh, oh, let me live, let me live. Oh, 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 let me live out loud. Can anybody hear me?
Words of Laverne Cox. We are not what other people say we are. We are who we know ourselves to be, and we are what we love. In these days when there is much that would trouble our spirits, we gather with others on the journey. May we find courage here, as well as challenge, as we strive to build, day by day by day, that community worthy of the name beloved. Come now and let us worship. Please join as we sing together, "There's a river flowing in my soul." Please join now in our responsive reading. It's by Maya Angelou, "Weaned from Our Timidity." We are weaned from our timidity. In the flush of love's light, we dare to be brave. And suddenly we see that love costs all we are and will ever be. Yet it is only love which sets us free. Please join now as we sing together our doxology, Spirit of Life.
Come unto me,
is our custom at First Unitarian Church to share our offering each month with an organization in concert with our church mission. For this month of March, we're sharing our plate with the Oregon Just Transition Alliance. OJTA is an alliance of communities on the front line of climate change, economic exploitation, and environmental racism. They bring together organizations to create ownership over our collective future and to move Oregon toward an economy that works for everyone while protecting our environment. You can give through the QR code that will appear shortly, or you can donate through the Donate Now button on Boxcast. Thank you for your generosity that sustains the ministry of this congregation, as well as our partners in the larger community. We make space in our service each week for the concerns of our community life. A reminder that you can send concerns to parishconcerns@firstunitarianportland.org. And if you have a prayer intention you'd like held by our ministers and our lay ministers through the week, send that to prayer@firstunitarianportland.org. I have a number of concerns to bring you this morning. Member Fran Daggett died yesterday morning at the age of 86. Fran had been in declining health for a number of years. Fran was a kind and gentle presence, and as one friend said, She seemed to know everybody and had enough love for all. This church community was an important part of Fran's life. We hold her daughters, Robin and Carrie, her 6 grandchildren, and her many friends at this time of loss. Member Tom Ruddy died on March 17th at the age of 84. Tom joined the church in 2003 and was an almost every Sunday attender. Tom served as a greeter. He leaves a son and family, as well as a cadre of second service friends here at the church. James Thomas Smith, brother of member Bill Smith and brother-in-law of staff member Dana Buell, died on March 14th at his home in Jacksonville, Texas. We send Jim's family our prayers as they grieve his loss. May they find comfort in their love and family bonds. The sister of Ted Okrasinski, Suzanne Okrasinski Smith, died on March 12th in Cherryville, North Carolina. Suzanne recently entered hospice care with Lewy body dementia. She was 77 and leaves 2 grown children and 5 grandchildren. We hold Ted, his wife Lois, and their extended family today. And a joy. Members Bill Cunningham and Steve Nelson were married in a small private ceremony in the Elliott Chapel last Tuesday. The ceremony was on the anniversary of their first weekend together, and they are honeymooning at the same hotel where they stayed 18 years ago. We celebrate with them and send them our love. And finally, we once again name in this space another mass shooting in our country, this time in Boulder, Colorado, this time 10 victims. The locations are different, but each time this happens, more lives are cut short, more families are faced with the loss of loved ones, more communities are left hurt, fearful, and shaken. And once again, we are left asking why. What is it can we do? And in that spirit, will you pray with me now? Spirit of life and of love, God of many names and of no name, be with us on this day. Once again, there is much to hold, much to bear, Spirit. Losses in our community, losses in our country, losses in our world. Most of all, losses from gun violence that didn't need to be. Some of those victims whose names we know, but so many victims we may never know. The lives of trans siblings, the lives of Black and brown and BIPOC siblings, the lives of too many of your precious children. Be with us as we try to hold all that life brings us, Spirit. These are times when there is so much that divides us, but also these times when there are signs that the end of this pandemic may be somewhere in the future. These days when we can at least imagine something called normal once again. Hold us in your steady mercy in the midst of it all. In this season of spring, remind us of the story of Passover as we name those things that still keep us in bondage, those things that so often hold us back, as we recognize that until all of us are free, none of us can be free. And be with us as we make our way on this Holy Week, as we journey towards Good Friday, as we come face to face with death and with despair. Sustain us in our search for hope and meaning, for rebirth, for new life that we may not even be able to imagine. Just as the earth reminds us over and over again that spring can come, help us as we make our way towards Easter. And through it all, remind us of what can ground us, Remind us that we are held in a love that won't let us go. And call us, Spirit, every day we live to be agents of that love. Amen. Let's take a few moments now and be together in silence. Let's sing together now, I Feel Like Going On.
I feel like going on. I feel like going on. When trials mount on every hand, I feel like going on. I feel like going on. I feel like going on. When trials mount on every hand, I feel like going on. I feel like going on. I feel like going on. When trials mount on
Good morning. A reading from the Trans Agenda for Liberation from the Transgender Law Center. Black trans women must be trusted to lead. Black trans feminine people hold the expertise and solutions to end violence in our communities. We hold the knowledge to create a world where Black trans feminine people have the freedom to thrive. We envision a world where Black trans folks have equitable access to healthcare, housing, bodily autonomy, and intergenerational connection. Beloved home, trans people belong. We demand a movement that honors Native American, Alaskan Native, Native Hawaiian, Pacific Islander, Indigenous Black, and migrant, transgender, gender nonconforming, non-binary, and two-spirit peoples by centering their leadership. Indigenous or migrant, we understand that our relationship to this land that is our home is as important as our relationship to ourselves and each other. We demand a world where Indigenous cultural practices, land and body sovereignty are respected, where trans people are never forced to leave our homes, and where we have the freedom of movement to seek out our own belonging. Freedom to thrive. Trans people deserve the freedom to thrive. We demand a world without cages. We envision a world where people in sex work economies have rights and protections, and where sex work is no longer used as a justification for violence and harm. We demand not only freedom, but active community support in building lives for ourselves, our families, on our own terms. Transgender Law Center.
Whoa, another day. I'll take your pain away. Some people talk about you like they know all about you. When you get down, they doubt you. And when they tip in on the scene, yeah, they talking about it. Cause they can't tip on the scene, yet they talk about it. Talk about it. When you get elevated, they love it or they hate it. You dance up on them haters. Keep getting funky on the scene while they jumping around you. They're trying to take all your dreams, but you can't allow it. Cause baby, whether you're high or low, or whether you're high or low, you gotta tip on the tightrope. Tip on it. Tip on the tightrope. Tip on it.
I join you from the land of the Puyallup tribe of Indians, specifically the Nisqually, at the foot of Mount Tahoma. I ask that as Mount Tahoma looks over us, that we have strength for this particular conversation, this dialogue that I would like to open with you today. I will be discussing a difficult topic with you, violence, and in particular, violence against Black trans women and femmes. Please take care of yourself in your self-care today, and as always, remember that there are those of us who don't have a choice but to look, to fear, to be triggered over and over and over again. However, take your time. There is so much pain in America at this moment. It is inhumane to try to digest it all in one big gulp. If there's one thing I know that you as Unitarian community know how to do well, it's to mindfully work through and gently mourn and celebrate those who have been lost. I'd like to start with recent events. This week, we are learning more about the senseless shooting in Boulder, Colorado, 10 lives lost, 10 creator souls taken from us whose life's work was snatched away from the world in a second. It is easy, too easy to kill, too easy to get the weapons of murder, and unacceptable that white supremacy, toxic masculinity, consumer capitalism keep playing this dangerous game with the lives of our loved ones. Fear is power, and there is no shame in being fearful at this moment. We can't stay there in fear, however. How can we, any of us, really feel comfortable going shopping at the grocery store in this moment, taking our children to school, going to the movies right now? Fear becomes power when we act on it. These fears have always been with the Black community in general and the wider trans community, especially Black trans women and femmes. The fear of being misgendered in the grocery store, abused by police for simply existing, our children being bullied because their parents are trans, the inability to enjoy ourselves in public without fearing harassment, stares, or violence. Mass shootings are hard for all of us, harder for others. Please take care of those who are experiencing complex and compounded trauma this month. We all deserve freedom from fear. Last week's events, as you know, followed yet another destructive act of toxic masculinity, white supremacy, misogyny, and consumer capitalism. Terror inflicted on the Asian American, Pacific Islander, and Latinx community with the shooting that happened in Atlanta. It's all too much, y'all. It's senseless. It is unfair. Monthly and sometimes weekly, we also learn of the brutal murder of yet another trans woman of color, usually a Black trans woman. I know you've been made aware of the problem. Even in your own neighborhood in Portland, Titi Gully, Asia Raquel Ron Spears were lost to Portland. Creative minds wiped out from the city, art destroyed, love lost, friendships broken suddenly, laughter silenced. Toxic masculinity, white supremacy, trans misogynoir, are all anti-creative. They work to disrupt beauty and creativity, whether it's in Portland, Atlanta, Boulder, Minneapolis. All of the things that I've mentioned and all that we're seeing on the national scene right now may seem like disparate problems. You may be feeling pulled one way or another. You were moved this summer and began acting on behalf of Black life. Thank you. Now there are communities nationwide standing up, inspired by the bravery of BLM activists this summer, demanding justice also. How do we who have limited funds, energy, limitations of body, boundaries around our trauma, how do we handle the influx of calls for justice? Where do we donate, volunteer? Who do we march with? On which day? How many marches do we attend? The violence that plagues our communities, from police violence to intimate partner violence, these are monsters of the same ilk. Multi-headed hydras with a body composed of white supremacist ideology. The Asian American and Pacific Islander communities, Black Lives Matter, the Black trans community, and activists working to end mass shootings have distinct needs. Yes, they do. But the target of our anger and mistrust is one and the same. I am here today to encourage you to keep with it. Keep with it, y'all. And lean in a bit more in the work you already have begun. I bring a message of faith to you in this moment. Faith in the path laid this summer in the wake of the loss of our creative giants, George Floyd and Tony McDade. Activist and scholar Scott Nagakawa reminds us that we can walk and chew gum at the same time. He asks his own Japanese American community and Asian American community to, at this moment when there's so many competing interests, acknowledge the leadership of Black Lives Matter and use the political space and opportunity this movement has created to ask yourself, how does this movement serve me and those like me, actually, whether we be Asian, Latino, Native, or white? That might sound difficult, like possibly co-opting the work of Black persons, but I agree with Nagakawa when he instructs that we have to be able to tell the stories of the many oppressions that hold in its central role the fulcrum of white supremacy. When Nagakawa says fulcrum of white supremacy, he means that anti-Blackness is the fulcrum, the leverage by which all of these violent means are activated. They're spun, they perpetuate a system of white supremacy. When I feel overwhelmed with the sheer volume of asks from communities of color in this moment, we can return to the principle of centering and be assured that the work we have begun is not a distraction from current events. We are not leaving anyone out by centering. Centering is a methodology that will allow us to affect change across multiple communities. We should be leaning further into centering Blackness right now, more specifically, Black trans women and femmes. This only works if we can get specific, deep, and commit to our centering principles. Specificity brings strength to social action. Specificity brings strength to social action. When we take care of the most marginalized, those with the most intersectional needs, we take care of the entire community. Centering is choosing a strategy, a skillful means of working in the spirit of accompaniment. The great Dilgo Khyentse Rinpoche, Tibetan master and father of much of American Buddhism, would say his mind is as wide as the sky and his actions as fine as a needlepoint. That wideness of mind is the acknowledgement of interdependence and the fact that when we hold the vast view of the needs of all, even when we work precisely with a niche community, we cannot but affect all marginalized communities. Centering as an organizing strategy is the habitual return to an initial ethical principle and the shaping of work, life, faith, and our spiritual practice around this principle. In my own spiritual tradition, we call this right livelihood, right not as in right, versus wrong, but right as in true, like true north. It's true versus false. In fact, in Buddhist ethics, the right of right livelihood is in alignment with clear seeing of the interdependent nature of reality, or reality as it is. When we choose centering, when we commit to this interdependent centering that has accompaniment in community, we are aligning with our true nature, tathata, suchness. So I've mentioned accompaniment a few times. I'm going to define it a little bit according to feminist scholar Catherine O'Donnell. It means walking with one another through the process of mutual learning and deepening collective commitments. It is not enough for affected communities to simply receive cash or a few bodies helping out on a Sunday at a rally. Yeah, y'all, if it's all you can give that. That's great. But what we need as a community, in terms of community support, is accompaniment with the Black community, Black trans community. Mutual learning and a deepening collective commitment from all. We need to build relationships that are more rich each year, that navigates really difficult conflict well, that is accountable to each other, that moves within the power of interdependence, the spirit, tathata, truth. I'm asking you today to, with me, deeply contemplate your life's work, your livelihood. Can you be inspired today by a life of centering that speaks to the lowest common denominator of oppression? Oppression shared among all those who have been affected by white supremacist violence in America. A centering that is not exclusive of others, but is not afraid to name the disproportionate impact of certain communities. I ask this at this critical moment. Everything seems critical right now. I know we deserve so much better, but we are in crisis. The identities of people like me, Black trans women, are at a dangerous intersection of historical oppression, especially now. Anti-Blackness, transphobia, misogyny, sexual violence, and more. As a country, we have not agreed that harming Black trans women is a problem. In fact, we are not even close to agreement that trans people have a right to exist in this country. Anti-trans bills attempting to erase our existence are arising in every corner of America. I'm afraid there's a storm coming, a backlash against Black Lives Matter in recent political events that will target and is now targeting the most vulnerable Black persons, Black trans people, young trans people, and non-binary people of color. The murder rates are already through the roof, and it's really, really high as a percentage per population. I'm deeply afraid the problem will continue to get worse. What I want to name in this moment is, we often speak of trans oppression because we have to name it, but I do want to close out with this, that we are not this oppression as a people. Black trans people are conjurers of social change, creators of art, keepers of the community. Y'all, to conjure is to create outside the constructs of settler, colonialism, white supremacy, and capitalism. That's who we are. Conjuring is a deep knowing that communes with the numinous. It communes with the love holding all. This creativity that we hold as a people is inherently wise, reasonable, transformative. Yet we hold this magic and are also at risk of having all of our beauty destroyed at disproportionate numbers. Shannon Collins, in a fascinating article in the Medium entitled "The Splendor of Gender Nonconformity in Africa," explores the gender binary and its history on the continent of Africa. But before the implementation of rigid European binaries, gender diversity was far more acceptable in Africa. Malcolm Musome, who some of you know, is quoted in the article as saying that for the Dagara people, gender was and is not dependent on anatomy, but it's an energetic force. Gender was determined by how someone expressed their own spirit, their own sources of knowing. Black, trans, and gender diverse people were held sacredly and with honor in African societies, as well as others. For example, in Africa, the Lugbara people of what is now called the Democratic Republic of the Congo and Uganda, we were respected as holy leaders. We were trusted to hold such a great treasure as the heart of the culture of a people. We were diviners in southern Angola, as well as much of Middle Africa and America. Something happened, something terrible occurred that transformed this ancient open gender diversity of a people. Something awful wiped out the knowledge that gender diverse people are the creators of culture, holders of the sacred, leaders of the society. That something, as you know, was white supremacy. And white supremacy does not concede, but takes control through exploitation and domination. With anti-Blackness as its fulcrum, its levers of power work to eliminate all that we are, and especially eliminate all that Black, trans, and gender diverse persons are. And now, all trans and gender diverse persons of all races experience the result of this oppression. When we work, y'all, from this principle of centering, we must deconstruct and tell the story of how white supremacy has worked to entangle us all in oppression. We must tell the story of who we really are, who we once were, who we are forced to be now. We have to think through the intersection of racism, classism, misogyny noir, and transphobia. Cultural studies theorist Ruth Wilson Gilmore, speaking about how this machine is built, it says that identities fracture in this cultural creation and form in the crucibles of state and society, public and private, home and work, violence and consent, official codes, habits, institutions, the military, immigration officers, and with the police who maintain order. It all has a lot to do with production and reproduction of white supremacist ways of being in the world. Centering and accompaniment is learning how this was constructed, identifying how anti-Blackness supports the status quo, and learning how we can produce and reproduce new ways of being in the world. There is no clearer place for me, and few areas that require more attention than the problem of violence against Black trans women. It is the same problem of anti-Blackness. It is unchecked. And its unchecked continuance enables Atlanta, Boulder, Minneapolis, and Portland. If I were in the church of my upbringing at this point, I would rev it up a little more. And then I would ask you, depending on how the sermon went, to come forward for an altar call. A call to those who want to dedicate or rededicate themselves to wholeness, accountability, and skillful strategy and centering. We're not in a church. We're in a virtual church. There is no altar besides of our hearts. So I'll ask you to meditate with me, to contemplate in the altar of your own spirit. If you are feeling called to orient your livelihood around the centering and protection of Black trans life, know that we need you. Know that we need you. We need you. Will you join me in the spirit of meditation and prayer? Thank you.
Please join now in our closing hymn, Completely Yes.
Now, with new commitments in hand, I'd like to close with a fitting words from 2 Corinthians 13. Finally, siblings, rejoice. Strive now for full restoration. Encourage one another. Be of one mind. Live in peace. This is the day we've been given. Let us rejoice in it and be glad. Go in peace. Practice love. Amen. Ashe. Blessed be. Tashita.